In the last lecture, which was the first part of this lecture, we were ended with the prisoner's paradox. The prisoner's problem was that there were 100 prisoners numbered 1 to 100. For example, in this picture, you see prisoner number 63, and there are 100 drawers labeled one, 2, 3, 4, etc. Starting one on the left one, the leftmost, the left top one, and the bottom one is 100. And each prisoner has to go to the this cupboard and open 50 drawers one at a time. And if he finds the number, his own number, within this 50, then he comes out, and all the 100 prisoners have to get their own numbers for them to be pardoned by the prison warden. And I give an example of in the case when there are 8 prisoners and 8 drawers, and each prisoner is allowed to open 4 drawers. I give an example of a successful uh, uh, way of the prisoners. So if the random numbers are like this 4, 6, 1, 3, 7, 5, 2, 8, then all the 8 prisoners will get their numbers. And I also give an unsuccessful example. And then I told you that this is related to the notion of permutation, and in particular, the cycles in the permutation. So in the successful example, there were cycles or 3 cycles 1, 4, 3, 2, 6, 5, 7, and 8. None of them over 4 in length. So the maximum length of the cycle here is 4. And in the unsuccessful example, we had a cycle of length 5, 1, 4, 3, 8, 2, and then 5, 7, 6, and a cycle of length 3. And I wanted to explain to you when we stopped why a cycle of uh, length bigger than 4 is the problem, and why, if all the cycles are less than or equal to 4, then we don't have any such thing. And that more or less I explained through this example. So let us now do some calculations. How many permutations of 8 numbers are there? 8 factorial. Because the first drawer can have any of the 8, and once you put in one number there, the second drawer can have any of the remaining 7, etc. So there are 8 factorial, 8 times 7 times 6, etc. up to 1. Many ways of arranging the numbers inside the drawer, the random numbers. Now, in how many of these 8 factorial permutations is there a cycle of length 5? Okay. First, choose 5 numbers from among the 8, in other words, you choose the cycle. For example, in the unsuccessful example, we had the cycle 1, 4, 3, 8, 2. That is one particular choice 1, 4, 3, 8, 2. Okay. So, how many of these 8 factorial permutations is there a cycle of length 5? The first we choose those 5 numbers, and I gave you just one of them. And the total number of ways you can choose these 5 numbers from the 8 is 8C5, which is 8 factorial over 5 factorial times 3 factorial. So these are the number of ways of choosing a cycle of length 5. However, the five chosen numbers can themselves be permutated. In other words, the order in which these numbers come, that's not important. This, so and the, and so that is uh, the 5 chosen numbers can then be permuted, and the number of ways it can be permuted is 5 minus 1 factorial or 4 factorial. Mm, Remember, it is not 5 factorial because there's a cyclical symmetry. There's symmetry. So you go from 1 to 4 to 3 to 8 to 5 and then again to 1. So in which order? So the 1, instead of taking 1 to be the first, if I had taken the next number 4 and then the 3, then we would have got the same cycle. So that is why there's 4 factorial. And the remaining 3 numbers can be permuted in 3 factorial ways because we have already chosen 5 and out of 8, so remaining can be in 3 factorial ways. So the total number of uh, uh, cycles of length 5 in these 8 factorial permutations is exactly 8 this quantity 8C5 multiplied by 4 factorial, because those are the ways in which those 5 can be permuted, multiplied by 3 factorial, which is exactly 8 factorial divided by 5. Now we count how many of them, the total number of permutations of length 6, because you have a cycle of length 6. So the cycle of, so this should be total number of cycles of length 6. Sorry about this misprint, typo. Total number of cycles of length 6 is exactly 8 factorial by 6, exactly by the same argument as earlier. And the total number of permutations of length, total number of cycles of length 7 is again 8 factorial by 7. And total number of cycles of length 8 is 8 factorial by 8. So the total number of cycles of 8 numbers, sorry, total number of permutations of 8 numbers, which has a cycle of length bigger than 4, is the sum of these 4 quantities, 8 factorial by 5 plus 8 factorial by 6, etc., up to 8 factorial by 8. Now, the total number of permutations possible is 8 factorial. So the probability of having a permutation with a cycle of length bigger than 4 is the quantity which we just calculated, 8 factorial by 5 plus 8 factorial by 6, etc., up to 8 factorial by 8, divided by 8 factorial. Thus, the probability of having a permutation where all cycles are of length 4 or less is 1 minus this quantity, which is 1 minus, as I've written here. Now, 8, as you can see, 8 factorial and 8 factorial all cancel, so it becomes 1 minus 1 over 5 plus 1 over 6 plus 1 over 7 plus 1 over 8, which is 0.0365. In other words, you can do a similar calculations for 100 prisoners, and as you can see, from in the previous calculation, we had 1 minus 1 over 5 plus 1 over 6, etc. We'll get 1 minus 1 over 51 plus 1 over 52, dot, 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 1 over 100, which is approximately 0.312. In other words, with following this strategy, there's a nearly a 30% chance of the prisoners avoiding the guillotine and coming out free. So the moral of the story is that if you have to commit a crime, then you better be a probabilist. And in this connection, I want to give you an exercise. So do this entire thing for 2n prisoners. So there are 2 times n number of prisoners, and there are 2 times n number of drawers in a cupboard. What is this? What do you get as to be the answer? And then take n to be infinity and see what it is. Along with this lecture, I'll send you another PDF file where I will just give some exercises connected with the previous lecture as well as the lecture which I'm giving now. The next problem which we are going to address is what's called the Bertrand's paradox. Here, a chord is chosen at random in a circle. What is the probability that its length will exceed the length of the side of the equilateral triangle inscribed in the circle? I'll just draw the picture and then you'll see. We'll actually give 3 different answers to the question, and they will all be distinct. Okay. Later, we'll resolve this paradox. This Bertrand's paradox is attributed to the 19th century French mathematician Joseph Bertrand. Okay. Solution 1. So this is a circle of diameter 1, as you can see, 0 to 1. And we have inscribed an equilateral triangle, which is the blue triangle inside. And the base of the equilateral triangle is parallel to the x-axis, which is given by this line, 0 to 1. Okay. So note one thing. If I were to inscribe this equilateral triangle in this circle, the points where it will cut the line 0, 1 are exactly 1/4 and 3/4. Okay. So because of the symmetry, we can specify the direction of the chord beforehand. So suppose we specify that the chords are at 60 degrees with respect to the x-axis. So with respect to the x-axis. So this is a chord which is at 60 degrees with respect to the x-axis. So clearly, if a chord like the yellow chord, which intersects the line 0 to 1 between 1/4 and 3/4, then this will have a length which is, the yellow line will have a length bigger than the side length of this equilateral triangle. Whereas this green line, which is to the left of which intersects the x-axis to the left of 1/4, or this green line, which intersects to the right of 3/4, they will have lengths which are shorter than the length of the equilateral triangle. So as you can see here, so it's only the yellow chord. So what does this mean? This means that if the chord intersects the diameter between 1/4 and 3/4, then its length will be larger than the side of the inscribed equilateral triangle. Now, 3/4 to 1/4, this is a length half, and this also has a length, and the remaining also has a length half. So the probability that we'll get a chord which is like this yellow line, which is larger than the length of which is larger than the side of the equilateral of the inscribed triangle, is exactly half divided by 1. In other words, the answer is half. Okay, that's the first answer, solution. Second solution, now let us also do another way of looking at it. So because of the symmetry, we can actually hinge one end of the chord at a point of the circumference on the circle beforehand. So we hinge the chord here. Okay. And this black line is the tangent to where we hinge the chord. And also we draw the equilateral inscribed triangle in this fashion. So one of the vertex is at this hinge, and the other two are accordingly. Here you can see, again, just like before, only the green chords will have length less than that of the side of the inscribed equilateral triangle. Whereas the yellow chord will have a length larger than that of the inscribed equilateral triangle. So what do we see from here? What we see from here is that if the chord makes an angle between 60, so this angle from the tangent to the blue line here, is 60, and this angle is from 120 to 180. So in other words, if the chord makes an angle between 60 and 120, then it lies inside, it goes through inside the equilateral triangle, and therefore it is an example of such a yellow line which has a length larger than the side of the inscribed equilateral triangle. And any other, if the chord makes an angle less than 60, it will be like this green line, which will be outside and therefore will have length less than the side of the equilateral triangle. And similarly for this, between 120 and 180. Therefore, if the chord makes therefore, what we see is that for the chord to have a length larger than that of the side of the equilateral triangle, it has to have an angle between 60 and 120. In other words, the possible range is 120 minus 60, whereas the total possibilities is 180 degrees. So it's 120 minus 60 over 180, or in other words, 1/3. That's completely different solution from the half which we got. So we'll have to resolve this paradox. Why are we getting two different answers for the same question? Well, that's not it. I'll give you a third answer. Look at the circle circumscribed inside the equilateral triangle. So as earlier, red is the circle of diameter 1, blue is the inscribed equilateral triangle inside this circle, and now I am drawing a circle inside this equilateral triangle. Okay. Here, you can see that only these green chords, which do not touch the black circle will have a length which is less than that of the side of the equilateral triangle, whereas any chord which goes through this black circle will have a length larger than that of the inscribed equilateral triangle. And I, I want you to think about it and see why this is true. The answer is very simple, but you'll have to just draw the picture on a piece of paper and convince yourself that if a chord does not touch the black circle, it will have a length smaller than that of the equilateral triangle. In particular, actually, you can just see by taking any chord parallel to the equilateral triangle itself, if it goes from, if it's parallel, then, and if it doesn't touch the black circle, then it will have a length smaller than the side of the equilateral triangle. Okay. Now the radius of the circle inside here, the black circle, is exactly half that of the original cycle. So the area of this is 1/4 the area of the original circle, because area is pi r square. Now the center of the chord can lie anywhere inside the original circle. In particular, if the center of the chord lies inside the black, then only it will have a length bigger than the side of the equilateral triangle. But the center, this circle inside, has area 1/4 of that of the big red circle. Therefore, with probability 1/4, a chord, a random chord, will have a length larger than the length of the equilateral triangle inscribed in this circle. So, well, we've got now three different solutions: half, 1/3, and 1/4. How do we resolve this? Clearly, all three cannot be correct. The problem is that this question is ill-posed. In mathematics, as well as in probability, as I wrote in the abstract, the question has to be posed with all its specificity. We have actually solved three different problems based on the assumptions we made regarding the chord. In the first solution, we made the assumption, where we are, in the first solution, we made the assumptions that the chords are all parallel, and we are looking at how they are intersecting the x-axis. In the next one, we made the assumptions that the chords are all hinged, and then we are seeing how they are, at what angle are they, these chords are. And in the next, we are looking at the center of the chords and saying, okay, in what is the proportion of the area where the center of the chord should be to have the length of the chord bigger than the side of the equilateral, the side of an equilateral triangle. So these are actually three different specificities. In mathematics, unless you're completely precise in formulating your problem, you will get three different solutions like this. In other words, the resolution of this problem is that in each of these solutions, we took a completely different problem and we're working with a different problem. Okay. So this is really important. Like in mathematics, you cannot think of the standard problem. If you look at 1 minus half plus 1/3 minus 1/4, etc., we know that this converges. But if I write it as 1 plus 1/3 plus 1/5 plus 1/7 and then minus half minus, well, you cannot rearrange terms in this series. And this is so you'll have to be very specific. And this is an example of a question where you have to be very specific. Let me end with the so-called airplane seating problem. And so the problem is this. An aeroplane has 100 seats, and there are exactly 100 passengers, each of whom has been allocated a seat. In your boarding pass, you see the seat number. Suppose the seats are numbered 1, 2, 3 up to 100 instead of A, B, A1, A2, etc. Just 1, 2, 3 up to 100. Um, the, the first passenger who enters has lost his boarding pass. And so he goes and sits on a random seat. The next passenger who comes in, if her allocated seat is available, then she sits there. Otherwise, if her seat is occupied, she chooses a random seat. The third and the fourth and all the remaining passengers follow the same procedure. In other words, when you go in, if your number is 15, if you see the number 15, the seat number 15 is free, you go and sit there. If not, you just choose another seat at random and you sit there. The question is, what is the probability that the 100th passenger, in other words, the last passenger, gets his own allocated seat? It must be very small, right? Because if the first passenger loses and goes and sits somewhere else, and the second passenger uh, can go and sit, but there are 100 passengers, so the answer should be very small. But let us calculate and see that it is not actually. Suppose it is a two-seater plane, and there are exactly two passengers. So there's seat number 1 and seat number 2, and there are two passengers. So what can happen? The person number 1 goes in, he has lost his ticket and he sits in seat number 2. And so the person number 2 has to sit in the other one, which is seat number 1. And so there is a mismatch. But also it could happen that the person number 1 has lost his number, but has actually randomly sitting on the correct seat, in which case person number 2 will also sit on the correct seat. So for the last passenger, namely passenger 2, will either be sitting in this wrong in this particular case or in the correct seat in the second particular case. So the probability is half that the second passenger gets her allocated seat. This is for a two-seater plane. What happens in a three-seater plane? So there's a three-seater plane and there are exactly three passengers. Now there are two possibilities. Let's look at the passenger 2. Passenger 2, so passenger 1 has lost his ticket, boarding pass, and is sitting at on a random seat, which could be his own. Passenger number 2, there are two possibilities of passenger number 2. She gets her allocated seat, in other words, seat number 2, or passenger number 2 does not get her allocated seat. If passenger number 2 in either case, so let's look at the first case. Passenger number 2 gets her allocated seat. So in that case, passenger 1 has taken either seat number 3, so that passenger 3 cannot get her allocated seat and will sit in seat number 1, or passenger 1 has taken seat number 1, so that passenger 3 gets her allocated seat. So in other words, in this particular case, so with probability half, passenger 3 gets her allocated seat in this green case where passenger 2 gets her allocated seat. So the last passenger will have a probability half of getting the allocated seat. In the second case, where passenger 2 does not get her allocated seat, it must be the case that passenger 1 is sitting on seat number 2. Otherwise, passenger 2, because passenger 2 is the second passenger to come in. And if she does not get her allocated seat, that means passenger 1 must be sitting on a seat. So then, since passenger 2 does not get her allocated seat, she takes a seat at random. So she can take either seat number 3 or seat number 1. If she takes seat number 3, then passenger 3 cannot get her allocated seat because the seat number 3 is taken and passenger 3 has to go to seat number 1. And so that passenger 3 does not get her allocated seat. On the other hand, if passenger 2 goes to seat number 1, then 1 and 2 are taken because 2 is taken by passenger 1. Seat number 1 is taken by passenger 2, so that passenger 3 gets her allocated seat. In other words, in exactly one out of these two cases will passenger 3 get her allocated seat. So again, the probability is a half that passenger 3 gets her allocated seat. So in case of a three-seater plane with exactly three passengers, passenger 3 gets her allocated seat with probability half. As an exercise, I want you to give a proper mathematical argument to show that for the original question, namely when there are 100 passengers in a 100-seater plane, the probability that the last passenger, the 100 passenger, gets her own allocated seat is half. In fact, this number 100 and 100-seater doesn't change the question at all. It can be a 380-seater plane with 380 passengers. Then the probability that the last passenger gets his or her own allocated seat is still half. So think about this, and this is the end of the first lecture. And as I told you earlier, I'll send you also, there'll also be an attached PDF file with the questions for lectures 1 and 2. Thank you.